We'll now move to our second speaker of the evening, Dr. Gemma Simmonds. Gemma Simmonds is a sister of the Congregation of Jesus and is a senior lecturer in Pastoral Theology based at the Margaret Beaufort Institute of Theology in Cambridge, where she's also director of the Religious Life Institute. She's been a missionary in Brazil, a chaplain in the universities of Cambridge and London, as well as a chaplaincy volunteer in Holloway Prison, for 26 years. She's a regular broadcaster on religious matters on the BBC. Gemma, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President and the House. We've come to debate one of the most urgent issues of our time, one that is being focused on the Catholic Church in this particular instance, but one which we know tragically is prevalent in all walks of life, in all institutions, and in all types of human relationship. We're talking about abuse. Sexual abuse, certainly, but that is deeply rooted in the personal and systemic abuse of power, and that is endemic throughout all human relationships. We've only to look around us to realize that wherever there's an imbalance of power, whether it's in any of the churches or the BBC, in the film industry, in universities, in the legal profession, or in the very heart of people's families and homes, there will always be a tendency to abuse where imbalances of power exist. I am resolutely opposing tonight's proposal. This is not because I wish to justify the Catholic Church in this instance. I am not in the business of defending the indefensible. The McCarrick report, which the Vatican itself commissioned, on the crimes of the former Cardinal Archbishop of Washington, the ICSA report published 2 days ago on the Catholic Church in the UK, and many other reports make it clear that grave and mortal offences have been committed against children and sometimes against adults who were defenceless against those who exerted power over them in ways that are utterly repugnant and deeply offensive, not only to the person concerned and their family, but to every human being who has a shred of decency in them. I am so horrified and so appalled not only by the individual crimes, but about the weakness and limitations of the systems that allowed these crimes to flourish, as they have indeed flourished, in other secular systems where there have been inadequate checks and balances, that I am determined to oppose this motion. The reason for that is that it does not go nearly far enough. Repentance is good. Repentance is indeed necessary as a step in the process of reform and rehabilitation, but it's not nearly enough. And that is why I am urging you to vote for the opposition. You heard the main proposing speech tell you that in the judgment of the speaker, the repentance of certain individuals has been insufficient. I'm not sure what gives him the capacity to judge a person's personal conscience, but certainly with regard to how some of them have behaved further on, repentance has not been enough. So I'm asking you to oppose this motion because it's a half measure. It doesn't go nearly far enough. If I speak with passion tonight, it's because for any practicing Catholic, the fact that these horrors were perpetrated within our community and were able to flourish hidden in plain sight and with little or no proper accountability is a matter not only of deep revulsion and anger, but profound shame. For me, it is as if any one of you went home tonight or during the Christmas vacation to discover that your own father or grandfather, your brother, your boyfriend, your husband, your son, all the time that you were living alongside them, loving and supporting them, was smilingly and hypocritically hiding the most appalling life of crime. It's one thing to look in the papers at the story of a stranger who has perpetrated unspeakable wrong on a child. It's entirely another thing to look and find that you're not looking at the face of a stranger, but the face of one of your own family. This is what fires my passion for my speaking tonight. Repentance is not enough. Whether it's the perfect repentance, the genuine repentance, I note we haven't had much of a notion of what that might be in the speech we've just heard. Repentance is not enough, and that's why we must oppose this motion of half measures. We have this on the authority of God himself in the person of Jesus Christ, whom Christians all over the world believe to have been God, come here to earth to share our common human condition as a man, to share it and to share the consequences of human sin in his own life and indeed in the shedding of his own blood. Here then is what Jesus has to say about those who offend against little ones. Offenses will come, but woe unto those through whom they come. It were better for them that a millstone were hanged about their neck and they were cast into the sea than that they should offend one of these little ones. Those are the words of God himself. Repentance is not enough. Sadly, we have found not only within the church, but within secular systems, systems of therapeutic help and change, where we have believed, where all sorts of governments and medical institutions and universities have actually believed that it is possible with therapeutic help to change those, to change the choices and behaviors and orientation of those who have sexual attractions towards children or who are inclined to use their power in order to exert sexual power over others. We have discovered over and over again, there is incontrovertible evidence that these systems, these therapeutic processes do not work. That leaves us with an impossible dilemma. What, in fact, are we to do? Are we to try and find a perfect system, a system that will always and everywhere screen out imbalances of power, abuses of power? Dear friends, that is impossible. It is humanly impossible. We have tried it in all sorts of ways, and whatever you may hear from the proposition, there have been very, very serious efforts at all levels of the Catholic Church and at all levels of all other kinds of institutions, including the university where we are this evening, to try and ensure that abuses of power never happen. Wherever there are human beings, there will be abuses of power. What are we to do? What are we to do with the people who perpetrate these horrors? What are we to do? We can try to build better systems. We must try to build better systems, but we will never build systems where it is absolutely 100% certain that we have screened out any kind of abuse. Contrition is described as detestation for sin committed with the resolution not to sin again. You may wish to call sin crime rather than sin. If you have a secular outlook, you may not actually hold with the concept of sin at all. But any of us who have ever witnessed a court of law, any of us who have ever looked at the prison system will know that evil happens wherever there are human relationships. The Church's doctrine declares that for anyone who has personally sinned, such contrition has always been necessary as a condition of obtaining forgiveness for guilt, that it cannot simply consist of a good resolution and a beginning of a new life or a new system, but in principle it must include the explicit voluntary rejection of a previous life. Human beings are free spiritual persons with a history in time. Each person has a cognitive relationship to themselves as well as a functioning will in regard to who they have been and what they have done in the past, in the present, and in the future. That is true of every one of us speaking in the debate tonight. That is true of every one of you listening to this debate. If a person has perpetrated a great evil, they cannot simply leave their past behind as if it's no longer real. It still exists as an element of the present. That is the agonizing dilemma with which we are faced. That is why I am saying that simply calling for repentance is insufficient and therefore must be opposed. Whatever we were is part of what we have brought about as a result of our use of personal freedom. That is the challenge, that is the dilemma of every human being born into this world. We must have a firm purpose of amendment. That is absolutely true. But repentance on its own is simply insufficient. Even the fruits of repentance on their own is insufficient. I wish with all my heart that I had a way of telling you that there is a system that can be built that will be foolproof, that will prevent evil happening. As far as I know, it's not only 2,000 years of the church's existence that has proved that those systems cannot and do not exist. It is the entire history of the human race. What we need to bring about, if we possibly can, is a wholesale conversion whereby human freedom is used not only to make moral choices, but to make choices of the systems we build. Yes, repentance is the first step towards this. With that, I am utterly in agreement with the proposition, but it is not nearly enough. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not vote for half measures. Please do not vote for a halfway house in what must be a radical and total revision of the way in which human beings conduct themselves in relationships of power, both personal and public. Thank you very much.